beginning.
Welcome to the Grief Dreams podcast. My name is Sean Ram alongside Dr. Joshua Black. How you feeling today, Dr. Black?
Oh, I'm inspired today, Sean. Today's a good day.
He is charged and ready to go. On today's podcast, we have Samantha Pasut, and she is authentic, living magnetism in a powerful package. She is an accomplished artist and art historian, a spirit guide, chakra healing clairvoyant, and an abundant love and courage facilitator. A healer and an empath, Samantha is Canada's youngest Reiki Master, and she also happens to be one of the leading CBD educators in the country. So CBD education is a big part of what she does, and she's been working with a business called MonaLisa Healing.com. So yeah, Samantha, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I'm super excited to talk to you and get to know you a little bit more. That's what we do in the podcast. And I always find it interesting what bios people send, right? Because like I get a lot of them and you see a lot of them and you make your own. And then yours was very interesting because I have a hard time putting you in a box of any kind.
Welcome to my world.
And so I'm curious, the being authentic, I think that's really interesting because it's saying not everyone is, and I can definitely understand that. So when did you become authentic, or how did you even get to that place where that was a goal of yours?
That's a really great question. It almost makes me want to cry. I think that my authenticity, or I know that my authenticity has been with me since I was born. I was born with a heart condition and I had heart surgery at 5 days old. So growing up, from the minute I had awareness and consciousness, I was always a very sensitive, funny, loving, and sometimes aggressive little girl, because when I see an injustice, it sparks something in me. Do you know what I mean? So authenticity is just something I am, because whether you've known me, like I said, for 5 minutes or for 15 years, I'm still that same person. And it's just important for me to have that sense of, connectedness with myself and my soul. I don't really need to search for who I am, because there's this deep knowing. And I've always knew that I would be doing something important with my life. It's just when you're 5, 10, 15, 20, you're making all those little steps that lead up to the big culmination of what is your life. So if you're going to say, when did I know? I knew from the minute I opened my eyes.
That's really cool. Very interesting. And
Yeah.
so do you get a lot of resistance for being authentic? Because I think in our culture, we fake a lot to please people. And so do you find resistance as you walk?
Oh my goodness. I grew up in a town where it's more socially acceptable to be fake than to be yourself. So I was met with resistance the minute I went into the system, the school system. I would have friends that were cliquey, and as much as I was part of maybe the clique, I was always also the punching bag, because I was the one that, take the kindness for weakness type of deal, So it's definitely something I've eased into, especially growing up. I'm 27 years old, so I'm mixed with all types of ages and cultures of people, from young 8-year-olds to old 80-year-olds. And you have to really know who you are. And people know if you know who you are when you meet them, So some people I'll click with because they're comfortable who they are, and some people I won't. And it's very, very, very evident and apparent. So it's not like I have to guess.
And so how do you deal with some of that conflict? Because you said like people would pick on you as you were, especially as a child, when you're still learning your coping mechanism and stuff. So how did you get through that?
As a kid, how did I get through it? A lot of reading and a lot of writing. My passion with painting, because I'm an abstract expressionist painter. That's like, if I need to release, that's what I do. But growing up, it was a lot of self-hatred. I took it out on myself a lot, and that's what kind of led me to spirituality, because you always forgive. Like I grew up Roman Catholic, forgive those that hurt you, right? So with that, I always ended up letting people come back around. But as you get older and you get stronger and you release the need to people please, you just become more resilient within yourself. As I got older, I fell into meditation. How I deal with it now is severe loving kindness, like sending out loving kindness. And I'm a Reiki Master, so energetically, it's so much easier for me to handle intense situations, because in a way I control it with my vibration. my vibration is stronger than a lower vibration, and I'll try to raise the vibration of whatever situation I'm in to fit my needs so I can be present in it. If I can't raise it, I have to leave. So as a kid, it was hard for me to cope because I grew up with it. That's what spiraled me into a deep depression. I was diagnosed with manic depression when I was about 18 years old. You know, they asked me if I wanted to take pharmaceutical medication. I was prescribed to them at 18 years old. I went home with antidepressants, but I never ended up taking them. My brother actually threw them down the toilet, and I'm so grateful he did, because a lot of our depression, a lot of our anxiety and our nervousness and all those things that build up, it comes from the need to create, or the need to express, or the need to be heard or seen. So my anxiety, my depression, even all of that picking, it just led me to me, because no one's going to help you but yourself, you know?
Yeah, I hear you. There's a lot of self-reflection, inner growth that we are responsible, and it's hard to rely on others because they just don't know, for the most part. And so I know one of my toughest critics, even with the grief dream stuff and moving forward, was, family. Like sometimes family just doesn't get you. And so as you started growing up and you started being a healer and an empath and doing Reiki, like, is it a challenge for your family to understand what you do?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Like when I started bringing, because I'm a crystal healer, like you come to my house, every windowsill, every ledge, every surface has a crystal on it. When I started working with crystals, my parents looked at me like I was crazy. They're like, what are you doing? This is against our religion, right? Like, but for me, religion, it just keeps you in a box for me. I appreciate all the stories from Indian culture to the Roman Catholic culture. I feel like we're all interconnected. And I'm very grateful that I've been met with more openness, because I'm still the same person, right? People get scared when you change, that you're changing in a way that, you're not going to be who you are. No, change and evolving are two different things. I don't think I've ever changed. I think I've just evolved. And that's that whole consciousness mindset idea behind spirituality and inner growth and manifesting your reality. Like, I didn't want to sit in my bedroom in Woodbridge my whole life. Like, I wanted to make change. I want to make change in the world. And, you make change by focusing on not what people can bring to you, but what you can bring to other people. So half of me getting to where I am right now has been doing that selfless act and servicing and making sure that I'm there for people. Because when I need someone, or when I need the right people, they'll show up for me, right? So it's a give and take. You have to be, when you're met with resistance, you as the healer or the facilitator of what you're doing, and you have to meet them with an open mind and understand that not everyone's going to see it, because traditions and our ancestral chains, they really tie us down when we don't know what or how they're affecting us. And I'm just grateful that I was born with this availability to see past the veil. Like when I was a kid, I used to say to my mom, when I was an adult, like I would talk about me being a grown-up, meaning, and I remember that vividly because I had the most vivid imagination, but maybe my vivid imagination was really my past life recalling and keeping me safe as a child, because I could escape into my imagination or escape into those parts of myself. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. A lot of what you're talking about, I have kind of a smile on my face because I went through a lot of that stuff. Like I have a family that's pretty, really, religious. They're Christian. And so understanding that, because what happened with me was I had to kind of separate myself from the religion because it was so entrenched in my family. Like both of my grandparents were ministers as well, and then
Wow.
my family was pretty religious. So in order to appreciate religion and Christianity, I had to almost separate myself out of the family ties because it was too entrenched. And I eventually, like I tell this story often, but like last summer I went to this Christian monastery and I had a different experience. I looked at it from a different lens, a different angle. And sometimes, like you said, religion does that, and especially when families kind of entrenched in it, is that there's these norms that are more important than the actual kind of content, and that can be disruptive because again, like you can't find your individual spirit within all of it.
No. And when it comes to Christianity, and I love I love Jesus. Like, I know it sounds funny. Like, I would be made fun of for being like the girl that loves Jesus. But if we can idolize like Brad Pitt, you know, why not idolize a historical figure that came to this earth to teach us about love? You know, like, that's how I view Jesus now. And I was even told by an intuitive once, and I always used to joke about it because I would go to this camp, and it was, they didn't really call it a camp. They called it a summer experience, and it was in Muskoka, Ontario. And you go up for 2 weeks straight, and it was called Teopoli. And every year they would cast me as Mary Magdalene. Every year, no matter what age I was, they're like, okay, you're Mary Magdalene. Like, that was my role. And I always used to joke, like, man, I must have been Mary Magdalene in the past life because I know what it feels to like be persecuted, as well as I resonate, you know. And I was told that, like, it was confirmed through a medium once who's not Roman Catholic or Christian of any of the nature, and she just asked me out of nowhere what's my connection with her because I carry her energy with me. So one of my past lives, for how deep my family's entrenched in the Roman Catholic faith, for sure was in Jerusalem during that time. Do you know what I mean? Like, when I was listening to these stories growing up, like, it wasn't like I was learning them. It's like I was remembering them. It's been a remembering. Like, my experience on earth has been more of a remembering than a learning experience, because I it sounds funny, but like, I listen to a lot of Big Sean. Like, I love him. And he says, like, it's like, I've done this before. Do you know what I mean? Like, people who are called to things so strongly, it's the soul being like, okay, now is the time. Like Basquiat said, now is the time. You can't wait for tomorrow. You can do it right now, you know, and that just starts with clearing your mind and changing the channel. Like, my manager, Peter, he tells me, if you don't like what you're watching, change the channel. Yeah. And that's very powerful, because if I want to start watching, you know, a joyful experience, or I want to manifest, you know, my dog being a little bit more trained than he is, you know, I'll just see it in my third eye. And whether or not it happens right that very moment or it happens in 2 weeks, I know somewhere down the line it's going to happen, because that's what I want in my heart, you know? So I feel like that's for anything you want in this world, no matter what, even your own healing, you know, visualize six packs. You know, you don't necessarily have to go to the gym every day and stress yourself out, but you can, like, love yourself until you feel that way. Does that make sense? I know I say
that makes a lot of sense, because
people think I don't make sense.
You're pushing yourself. Well, you're setting goals. You're setting goals for yourself. You're pushing yourself. And, you know, you might not vocalize them as goals or write them down or have a vision board about it, but you're putting those goals in front of you, so for you to reach at a time. And that's great. That's you know, maximizing the human potential. It's, you know, you really have a rebel spirit about you, and I think that's manifested since childhood. You know, being a child, pushing the boundaries and kind of having a different perspective on certain things. And that can be frustrating. That can be very isolating and frustrating, because you know, in a classroom, how many kids are rebels? You know, maybe, you know, 2 or 3.
Oh my God, I was such a rebel. Like,
right. And they're not finding each other. So you're lonely. So then the majority are on one side, and then the rebels, usually they're not banded together, but they're on the other side. And this is that tension. And I felt uncomfortable, you know, feeling different, because then you have to kind of now even battle your family, because you're the same rebel in that home as you are at school. It's crazy.
Oh man, like that actually just hit me in a way that I've never been hit before. Because, like, 100%, and it's not like a rebel without a cause. It's like the Martin Luther King rebel. You know what I mean? It's like
the Jesus rebel.
Yeah,
right?
Man, like Jesus rebel, 100%. And the thing about rebels, they're usually the empaths in the group, right? So I would be a conduit for other people's pain as a child growing up. And you got to be careful when you're a healer, because broken people know what you look like. They will gravitate to you, whether they're your teacher when you're 15 or they're your best friend when you're 20. It doesn't matter. Broken people are everywhere. Like, our souls are recycled. You know, I was born with my left artery completely shut, and the doctors did not catch that in any ultrasound in the womb. Like, that's something you catch. You look at the heart. You look at the function of the baby's heart. Like, how do you miss that? My mom brought me home. Like, I was discoloring. I had to give her signals as a baby that I needed to go back to the hospital, or else she would wake up one day and I would be dead. Like, that mentality that from the minute I was able to think made me realize that life is such a gift. And I don't understand why people are living it like this, you know?
Well, I think you do understand.
I do. It's just a frustrating thing, like Greta, like standing at the UN crying about the state of the planet. Like, it's the same situation. I don't understand. I say to them, I don't understand, because I want them to explain why they do that. Because once you start, like Socrates said, once you start examining the self, like the unexamined life is not worth living. Like people who live every day just to wake up, I respect it. I understand that's the culture. That's what we grew up learning. But if we're miserable, nothing changes if nothing changes, right?
Yeah, it's very interesting how people live their lives, because it's not as miserable as think if you or me or Sean were living that life, right? Like to us, that seems very miserable, but to them, that's life. And because they have a different perspective, they don't know any better almost, and they can continue to do what they do, but they wouldn't say that they're miserable. They'll say, oh, they're happy or they're okay. You know, like they go for, you know, different emotional reactions and stuff within themselves. But yeah, at the end of the day, it is interesting looking at human behavior and why people get up in the morning, why they do what they do. And, you know, that's why we love talking to people on the podcast, because you definitely have, like I said, a fight to you. You have a purpose. And it feels like I said, like, well, it feels like you told us, you've been here many, many times. It's like that reincarnation aspect of it all is, I think, is fascinating. And I'm curious to ask you, why do you feel you keep coming down to Earth? Right? Like, I'm guessing there's a purpose there.
Oh my God. Like I don't know if you're familiar with Vedic astrology.
No.
So Vedic is Eastern astrology, not Western, not your natal chart, like how we would do it here. It goes by more in depth than what we know. And I had a reading done last year around this time, and he told me that my chart is the chart of someone who's come here to do lasting work. Like that's why I think that's why the synchronicities have, like I've been told so many times that I've come here to do something very specific. And thank you for asking me that question, and I'm very honored. I don't know, like you said, there's not enough rebel spirits, and that whole idea that God can just be one of us. Like I was sitting in church the other, like 3 weeks ago was my parents' 30th wedding anniversary, and you know, I don't go to church very often anymore because I don't feel like, you know, one of the 10 commandments is thou shalt not serve any other God but I, and yet I'm here listening to people who don't practice so much. Maybe like you could be a priest, but are you godlike? You know, I could be more godlike than a priest by my own actions and my own intention and my own thought process. So it's funny. So the priest asked all the young children to come up to the altar and to sit and to have a conversation about the archangels. And you know, he was talking about the archangels and Archangel Michael, Archangel Raphael, Archangel Gabriel, and that's my job. My job is to literally work with the angels every day. So I enjoyed it. I was like, okay, let me hear what he has to say. And when he was explaining what angels do and how angels don't live on earth and how angels are just in the angel world and the spiritual world, I got a little bit confused because I believe in earth angels. I believe I'm an angel. You know, like I've gone through so much in my life that how could I not have that angelic resistance to so much pain and still love the people that hurt me? You know what I mean? So he sent everyone back to their seats, and I raised my hand in the middle of mass. I raised my hand. I don't know what. God was like, put your hand up. Like if he, in my mind, I'm like, if he's gonna talk to 8-year-olds, why can't he talk to me? You know? And he called on me, so I was like, okay, I've never done this before. And he probably was like, what is she doing? And I'm like, I don't know. And I said to him, I grew up believing, or was told by the priest that I was growing up with, that we were all made in the image of God. And he's like, okay. He reflects on that. We were all made in the image of God. True, because he was just talking about Archangel Michael, and he's the most godlike. He's the thinker. He's the philosopher. He's the protector, you know? I was like, so can't our own perception and judgments of people, you know, confuse us on what God really is, or who God really is, or what God really is? Because that's an honest question. As Roman Catholics, they're so judgmental, constantly casting stones at people who are not, you know, fitting a certain mold. But who said that the one mold that we're told we need to fit in is the only mold that exists? And he got so taken back, like in the middle of mass. And I did it a little bit out of spite. Like you said, I'm a rebel, you know, like I'm pushing the norms to make people go home and think about themselves. Like I don't, and as a psychic and intuitive, you sit in those places and everyone's going up for the communion and everyone looks sick, guys. Like, everyone looks sick. And I'm just like, what are we feeding ourselves here? Food and words are both things that you feed yourself. Thoughts are things you feed yourself. Like, I used to eat more than I should because I wasn't thinking more than I should. And that's also, as a kid, how I coped a lot was with food, right? Like, how else are you going to cope when you're a kid? You go to your grandmother, she makes you a plate of pasta, you have 2 or 3, and then you fall asleep and you're good. So it's just one of those things where, like, I don't know where this was going, but all I wanted to say is ask the questions, like, ask them, be that person, like, I've always been asking questions. Like, my optometrist last week was like, you ask too many questions. I was like, nah, like, I asked the right amount of questions.
Yeah. And I think that's amazing. And I think those are special people in this world, right? It is a small percentage, but at the end of the day, without the rebels, there are no paths that are being carved anew. And because you're carving a new path in a lot of areas, it's going to be difficult. It's not going to be that easy. You're not going to have a lot of fans on the side of the road. But, who knows, 5-10 years down the road, you see people adapting to it, like the main public. And then all of a sudden something's, hot again, or that's where you were, but you're past that even more. And, like, look, whenever you're any type of person like that, or even like you take someone like Jesus or something like that, you're still also, there's a part of you that's also still frustrated with society around you. There's a part of you that's disgusted by some things. Like, if you know some of the Jesus stories, like, he was very upset at the society as it was and what was going on. Yeah, very, very just taken aback by it, just disgusted, on a whole part. But how do you now also tie in love into that? How do you now, look at the other side of the coin and still love those same people who are like that? And that's, I think, a difficult thing. I don't have an answer for it. I'm definitely battling that as well. Is like, how do you look at society and frustrated and be upset at it, but also still love it and want to make it better? How do you do it?
How do you do it? Well,
it's tough, right?
Like, some days I'm so bogged down that I can't even get out of bed or get off my couch sometimes. You have to give yourself those days. You know what I mean? How do I do it? Like, that's a good question.
Because
it's just a lot of acceptance, like, especially as being a girl, like, I face a lot of jealousy issues. Okay. And it's not because I've got the perfect body, the perfect face. Like, that's not things that people are jealous about me. Because when it comes to my surgeries that I've talked about, I have major scars on my body that created, like, a lot, like, never mind people, like, the universe gave me a reason to question life. So when I meet people or I'm interacting with people who even are my friends and they're starting to show their true colors, you just step back. You step back, you distance yourself, and you send love. What good does hate, like, needing hate do? Nothing. An eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. So for me, sometimes I deal by disconnecting, and, like, there was a situation with, family. If I can't talk to you for a week and I can only text you, that's me creating a boundary, right? You create boundaries for yourself. I do a lot of, like, shielding. I don't know if you know what that is. It's like white light, right? So the minute I'm feeling really overwhelmed or really staticky and no direction and projected on and directed negativity, you got to sit with yourself and come back to your center. And that's why I love Reiki. I've been studying and practicing Reiki for 5 years. And Reiki is not voodoo. Reiki is not witchcraft. Reiki is literally unconditional love. It's the availability to sit there and send unconditional love no matter the outcome. Like, I even having partners and dating in this world, like, not everybody's worked through their toxic garbage or their toxic family patterns or history. Like, and you can love people and see their potential, but you've got to love yourself more than the potential that you see, because they're not giving you what you need. No one's ever going to give you what you need. Even as a lover, like, your lover should never be your home, they say. Because if your lover leaves, then you're homeless. You should always be your first lover. And I've been on my own for about over a year now. And from being in relationships consecutively, like maybe a cumulative of almost 5-6 years altogether. And, this has been the most positive experience I've ever had in my life, because I finally have the courage to be on my own. Like, you never know what you're capable of unless you push yourself. And some people are scared of pushing themselves. So if pushing yourself means that you send someone that's sending you negativity love, see what happens after, because it's a chain reaction, right? Every action has a reaction, no matter how big or small. That's just the way the universe works.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I totally agree with you on that subject of if you need to, disconnect or move away or find your own place from something that's negative or someone that is pushing a lot of stuff on you that's overwhelming you or just too much or you're not in that space. And like you said, to resupply, to restock that love in yourself, to kind of get that at maximum capacity. And then, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, disconnecting yourself so that you can, refuel that love. So then you can do and be your utmost best and then go ahead and do that. And then you can send, positive energy from afar and meditate on it or pray on it, whatever you need to be. I always tell Josh this story of how, when Jesus was starting out his work, there's a point when his family's like, oh, Jesus, his mom's like, Jesus, what are you doing? You should come back, visit your brother. You got this new brother you haven't even met yet. And I'm obviously paraphrasing, but he he goes, no, why are you pulling me back to this stuff? I have work to do. I got to go, reach out these other people. But
like when she lost him in the temple, right? Like, where's my son? I can't find him. Well, he's been teaching for 2 weeks in the temple. Like, why don't you go learn?
Yeah, and that's the separation almost Jesus had to make with his own family in order to kind of do what he needed to do. At least that's my take on it. But I think all of us are like that. We're all like that, where sometimes, even the people we love, we need to kind of step back because maybe what they're pushing isn't the best thing for us right now. But, that's the beauty. And you mentioned that as well.
Yeah, like my grandfather recently just passed away about 2 months ago almost. It was almost 2 months. And he was like my best friend. I'm April 17, he was April 13. I've never lost anyone, like, in the physical plane that I cared about, like with my heart, And he's just kind of shown me, being on the other side, that it's not what we think it is, All these rules and all these structures and all this judgment we carry around, we all go to the same place when we die. We really do. And, he's come to me before he passed away the same day. He came to me in my dreams to say goodbye to me. He was always a jokester, so he was wearing a Spider-Man mask and said, I'm not supposed to be here, and he gave me a big kiss, and then he went off flirting with the girls because that's what he loved to do, he was a ladies' man, but he was so devoted and loyal to my grandmother that you don't find love like that, right? So sometimes when you're given examples of beautiful examples, you got to have to reflect it within yourself before it can manifest, because we grew up more damaged than they did because we have different stuff we're dealing with. Marshall McLuhan says that we live in the age of anxiety. So whether or not you're conscious of your anxiety, it's present. It's present when you have insomnia and you can't sleep. It's present when you have back pain. I believe that all ailments come from as the stemming of anxiety, because anxiety, it deteriorates at your central nervous system, and then your whole body, your immune system, it just starts shutting down on you, right? So that's kind of, I don't know where I'm going with that. I just wanted to mention that, getting sick, getting old, it doesn't need to be the way that we think it is, because I believe that people have constantly thought that, oh, aging is such a negative thing, we're going to die. But listen, we live forever, and the work you do now doesn't just leave once you leave, it stays. You leave lasting impressions on people. I can't explain to you the kind of lasting impression that my grandfather left on hundreds of people. I've never seen that kind of farewell, in a way, And what's funny is my grandparents and my family, they're not in any way open to spirituality whatsoever. But my grandfather ended up going and coming through a psychic to one of my cousins. I'm the first grandchild, she's the second, and we're the only two daughters. And she went to work so he passed away on a Saturday. We had our funeral on the Monday, Tuesday, and then she went to work on Friday because she needed to get off her mind. And literally someone sitting at the bar, she was an intuitive, a psychic, said to her, pulled her aside and said, did your grandfather just pass away? Because he won't leave me alone. And she had a 45-minute conversation with my cousin Natalie. And that was just showing me, because I had prayed for a sign that it's okay for me to continue to do what I do without guilt, because I hold so much guilt. I have tattoos, you know, like I cut my hair, I'm single, like I'm 27, I'm Italian, I live on my own, I'm the oldest grandchild in both of my sides of my family. Like I've literally become the black sheep. But him coming through like that just showed me that he understands now what I'm doing, because they don't always understand when they're here. You know, it takes that level of like the transmutation. Like he had to transmute his body. He had dementia, you know. And when you look at Louise Hay, she's one of my favorite people. And there's this book called You Can Heal Your Life. When you look at dementia and on an emotional scale is not wanting to see the world as it is. And all my grandfather would ever talk about is how messed up the world is. Like he would complain, like he would literally turn the news on and he would not stop talking about the politics of the world for hours. That's what I grew up around, you know? So knowing that part of his leaving this planet was because he just couldn't bear to deal with it anymore. It completely, when I found that out, it completely shaped the way that I'm going to do my work. You know, like who are you doing your work for? You're doing your work for not only yourself, but for other people. When you get nervous, you focus on service. And that's kind of my motto. And, you know, he didn't even die from dementia. He didn't even die from his heart, his congenital heart disease. Like he died from fibrosis because of wrong diagnosis from a doctor that put him on medication that developed this. And then he ended up being on oxygen for 2 years straight in his nose. And if you know anything about oxygen, like we're houseplants, we're not machines, you know, and I don't believe that was the right thing to do at all. And the day after he died from his lungs drying up, we found out that the Amazon was on fire. And I was on Instagram and all these pictures show up of like a dried up lung, which is what I saw in my grandfather, and then the Amazon, literally the day after. And I kind of lost it, guys. Like I was just like, that's why I get mad. And that's why I have this like forcefulness, because why are we living our life like this? You know, like, why are we blind to our bullshit, as they say? You know, I can't handle that. I really can't. That's why I'll open my mouth, say something that someone may not like, but at least they're thinking about something other than themselves.
Yeah, they're probably thinking about you and like how mad they are at you. It's funny. But yeah, life is funny, right? Like with all the models, all the different trainings we've had, all the different perspectives people put on us. And it's a crazy, crazy time of trying to undo, I guess, a lot of the stuff that our past has sort of put into us in the sense of what we like, what we don't like, stuff like that. And so I think it's interesting, right? Like on just with people, like I used to be really frustrated with people, especially when it comes to grief dreams. I used to get offended when people didn't understand the topic or said it was useless. And now I've like come to accept it. You know, people are, you know, just people, and they're all living, you know, their different ways, and they have their different triggers, and you don't know if their life, and just because you think something's valuable to them, it may be scary, it may be threatening to something that they hold so true to how they survive, right? To how they've sort of kept going. Because it's a lot of anxiety, a lot of trauma people are carrying forward with no help, and they just learned a certain way to deal with it. And it's hard to undo that. It really is. But, you know, I'm glad you're doing what you're doing and helping people and trying to provide a message of love and getting people to try to understand what love is. I think that out of everything, I think that's the hardest thing. Even I've learned through like dreams, especially, is that, you know, what I thought love was has changed every year I've been alive since probably 8 years ago or 9 years ago. And so I'm really excited because it means I'm going somewhere and I'm feeling something that's different than last year. And so as much as I call it love, who knows what it really is, but there's like this peace and joy that's sprouting. But it's like you keep learning and relearning and seeing some of the stuff that's underneath it all. But at the end, I'm going on a little spiel. Anyways, it's your show.
No.
And so
love is the best topic. Love is the best topic because love has so many different facets and so many different faces that it's so hard. And like, that's another thing that I'm facing is this idea now that I'm hitting the age where everyone's getting married, having babies. Like it's, you know, go time. And I'm like, yo, no, you know, like you could love someone and not even be with them. I was explaining to the cab driver last night. I'm like, you have this thing called a twin flame, and your twin flame, you may or may not ever meet them, and you may or may not ever end up with them, but they're the person that you have this unconditional love for. They mirror the exact image of you in a way, but that relationship challenges you more to love yourself than to love this person that is you. Do you know what I mean?
I was gonna say the game's inside, right? Like, it's the more we can understand ourselves, the more we can understand the world and the chaos around us. Because it's really, I think, if you one and the same. And that's how I sort of learned to have compassion for the world, because I've learned to have compassion for myself and the growth struggles that I've went through, and I don't call them mistakes, but the different things that I wouldn't do again in this life. Yeah.
Yeah, and to jump on that, that's a great point. Like sometimes, and I'm just assuming as an empath, you're taking in a lot of stuff. You're taking in, like when your grandfather died, you're taking in that really intimate, right, individual kind of moment for you. But then they're taking in the Amazon burning as well, which is like the global kind of atrocity, and it's a global kind of grief. So you're taking in all these things, and I feel very linked to you, because I feel the same way in a lot of moments where that frustration builds. And it's people sometimes, again, I used to get frustrated with people, like, why can't they just do this? Why can't they just understand this? Why can't they just come forward? And whatever it is. But sometimes it just requires that much more effort into compassion, because you're like, look, people are intricate, complex individuals. Like if someone doesn't eat lunch, and then they go off and have a bunch of interactions, they could, their mood could be bad, and then they blow up on that next person. Like there's all these moments in these lives where you just can't control, and that's where trying to enter in that compassion into it is that much more important, because then I'm not focused on them, I'm focused on something else. Like it's if you run a race, the winner is not looking at back, he's looking forward. Everybody else is looking at the winner, right? Everybody's trying to catch up to number one. So like that's what it's like almost sometimes, where just me, like I'm focused too much on people doing me wrong, or people who have misgivings, or just not the right way to think, or whatever it is, and I get frustrated by that. But that's just holding me back. I'm looking back at the other runners for no reason.
I literally got a talking to yesterday by my manager, Peter, and he's just like, listen, we're going forward. Whatever happened in your family life, when it happened, and I explained to him, and I'll explain to anybody that ever like asks me about how I feel about what I went through as a kid, and it shaped me. It's not your story. You can rewrite your story. The chapters moving forward are not written, but what better way to live your life in the early stages? And I only see this now, and it's not because I haven't always had this perspective, but like, man, I'm so happy I didn't get everything handed to me on a silver platter, because I wouldn't know what it'd be like to work for something and achieve and earn, like not even just money, but self-awareness, like I felt like I really had to protect myself growing up all the time. I was getting abuse from every angle, and that's just because hurt people. And everybody was hurt, and nobody knew how to heal, and nobody knew how to help themselves. As you get older, you understand things, and when you're younger, you're obviously extremely angry, but man, like I have so much love for my family, because I wouldn't be Samantha without them. Even if I didn't have the resistance, I wouldn't have been able to find that path or forge that path, because I would just be following everybody else, right? It always gave me something to look at, something to think about. And that's all I'm ever grateful for. Like it's new information, new scenes, something new to understand. Like it's there for us it's our experience. We chose our experience. We chose this experience. You chose your parents, you chose your family, you chose your friends. It's all written. We have a blueprint. You can take the fork in the road to go left or right, but there are things that are predetermined, and that, and that's why our intuition can be confused with anxiety, and that's something I learned to distinguish, a little bit later, is that as a kid, I would have all these anxieties, but it was really just because, like an hour, 2 hours later, something really chaotic would happen. That was my way of my body telling me hey, on guard, you know?
Yeah, and look, I like the way you frame it like that. I think it's important to to take charge of the narrative of our life and to frame our past in the way that we need to move forward. And that might have been the best holistic approach for you, like you said, to choose all these things, and you chose that for a reason. And I think that, like, look, that's when you face those resistances as a young person, that was the trigger for you to resist back, and that's practice for you. That was like, that's pressure. They say pressure makes diamonds,
I said that the
right?
other day. I said that
or pressure can burst pipes. It can do one of the other, and if you're that person who took the pressure and took it in the wrong way, it could change the course of your life. But for you, it seems like it became practice, and you just got better at dealing with it. And that's something you can, hang your hat on and look back at your life and say, I went through that, but it was important for me to do it. And now look at me, I can do this, that, and whatever. I have capacity to love myself and others.
Well, like all of the security that I now have in myself came from, though, taking CBD every day for like 2.5 years straight. Like, I'm not going to lie to you. Prior to taking CBD, I've been a cannabis connoisseur, smoker for over 11 years. That was my antidepressant. I like to I zoned out a lot more than I zoned in as a kid. That was also another way that I coped. And, but when I found CBD, I was able to be present without being aloof and still hold my ground and change the transmit, like the wiring in my brain that viewed a situation negatively. Because the way CBD works on a mental illness level, one, it's a natural anxiolytic, and it helps balance the dopamine and serotonin receptors in your brain, but it also works within the whole brain. So if you have trauma or PTSD, it's going to help you acknowledge it, but not feel it anymore, because you still have to accept what you've been through. And if it wasn't for CBD, I literally would not be this person either. Like, I know that for a fact. And that's why I got involved with MonaLisa Healing, because I want everybody to have this availability to feel like they're free from their mind. Because we're just chained in our heads. It's all it is. Every ailment, I believe, no matter what ailment it is, from the most severe to stubbing your toe, comes from your brain. Comes from the energy that you're putting out, what you're thinking. And I've chronically been hurting. People know me as a klutz. Falling, slipping, breaking, like I'd fall up the stairs as a joke, like growing up. Like, I'd never fall down the stairs. I'd fall going up the stairs. Trying to skip a couple steps. But that's also just ways that I was punishing myself, because that comes out in, I never took it out on anyone else. I'd always take it out on myself, not being able to live in the moment as much as I'd like, living in joy, experiencing it and feeling worthy of it, because I have this like imposter syndrome where, I've been told that I'm not this person, but I know that I am. So who do I believe? You got to believe yourself, no matter what people are going to tell you. Someone's going to try to test you, and you've got to see whether or not you're strong enough to pass the test, right? And CBD gave me that mental clarity and that mental strength to push through, because it only amplified mindfulness and meditation that I also do, right? Like, mindfulness is a neurogenesis. So is CBD. And neurogenesis means that the building of new brain cells and the protection of the brain. And we know that, one traumatic situation could change your entire life and the way you view yourself. So knowing there's an alternative out there that isn't pharmaceutical based without any side effects and has zero harm on the human physiological state besides helping it, because we have something in our body. Every mammalian life has something in their body called the endocannabinoid system. It's called the ECS system. And that system naturally balances the rest of your body, every other system. So for me, when I started learning about this and I incorporated it with crystal healing, I incorporated it with Reiki, I incorporated it with art, it's like the art and science, right? Like Leonardo da Vinci. He considered himself a painter last, and that's mostly what people acknowledge him for. But that was not what he thought he was. He was an engineer, a mathematician, a carpenter. Like, he did everything. And that's kind of how I view myself. So having that art and science balance, and people having more balance in this, whether it's sports and then reading a book, you need the physical, you also need the mental. It's got to come from both angles.
I totally agree with what you're saying in a lot of ways. I think that, like, what whether you do CBD, whether you do yoga, whether you do meditation, these are all portals almost, and ways you can alter your perspective, which I think that's the main thing you're looking for, is how to get out of your own head and into a different zone, which also, because growing up, you had this idea of yourself as a klutz. Well, if you have the idea of it, it's probably going to manifest more and more times because you think that, right? What shifting that perspective away from that into who you actually want to be, is what I guess CBD does for you, and what it can do for other people, and what a lot of other people use in whatever yoga, Reiki,
Well, you should do it
meditation.
all together. Like, I feel like they're just all tools.
Yeah,
God gave
yeah.
us our tools, and it's how you use them. If you're having a mental breakdown, what are you going to do? Yes, you may want to go into a meditation, but how about if you have a hard time focusing? Well, there's something to help that. You know what I mean? Like, I always look at the answer is one, but then there's 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's kind of how I feel about everything that I do, whether it is CBD. Like, I love meditating. A lot of my meditating is visualization meditation. A lot of it comes from, closing my eyes and envisioning peace. Because no matter what people are going to tell you, or, whatever guided meditation, you still have to believe it in yourself and in your soul and in your heart. Like, you have to believe it. That's just and then there's animals, right? Like, there's so many aspects to what you could do to make yourself a more wholesome person. But it doesn't matter what you do, you have to live it. Like, you have to be it. You have to embody it. Like, you could say you're a nice person, but how about if you're really not, Like, usually if you have to convince others, then you are also trying to convince yourself.
Yeah, that's not a good place to be if you have to convince people that you're a nice person.
I'm nice. I'm a nice person, right? Like, people should just tell you if you're nice, Like, maybe your consciousness being like, are you?
All right, so I guess this is a good time too to talk about MonaLisa Healing, in the sense of, so you have the website, and so what products are on there, and what can people find on there if they want to know maybe more about the topic? Because I know it's just becoming really something in Canada with the legalization of marijuana, so a lot of people our eyes are a little more open. So could you just talk a little about what's on the website?
Yeah, so we are a hemp derived, non-psychoactive, THC-free company, meaning like this is the hemp derivative of cannabis. So it's not even cannabis whatsoever, because we don't want to really work with that, right? We want to remove the stigma. So what you'll find on MonaLisaHealing.com is right now a series of tinctures. So there's 3 different strengths. There's a 750, a 1500, and a 3000 milligram tincture that are all in 30 ml bottles. We manufactured this product straight with our heart, like purity, quality assurance. It's triple lab tested, because I've worked in the industry. I've built 2 other companies when it comes to CBD, and I say, if I don't make it, I don't take it, because you don't know who to trust, and I trust myself. So I manifested into my reality in a way of giving other people what I take myself, because I know it helps me. Usually people will be like, well, what do you do? Like, like, how are you this person? A lot of it is I give it to CBD, because, whether you're drinking your 12 ounces of water and eating your fruits and vegetables, or taking your vitamin D or vitamin C or whatever it is, like, there's something you do every day that helps make you feel the most optimal self. And I went through, after taking high dosages of CBD for almost 2 years, like, I had balanced out my digestion. I lost 20 pounds of emotional weight that I cannot gain back. I fluctuated my entire life with my weight, and like, CBD completely changed my digestion. It completely changed my flexibility. It completely changed any inflammation. Like, I had broken my ankle and my wrist throughout my life. And when I started taking the CBD, I started feeling like this tingly sensation in both those areas, because it regenerates bone tissue and muscle matter. This molecule is literally one of the most powerful plant anti-inflammatories. So for people who suffer from chronic inflammation and they're popping Advil, that's deteriorating the inside of your stomach, right? So my family is your firsthand experience is what where you see you need to help people, right? So we made MonaLisa with the intention. It's an online site, because people really don't have that much time to go out anymore. Like, you got to be focusing on yourself, you know, like it's nice to have the availability of something showing up in 1-2 days without having to pay for shipping. I understand that. I never really understood the whole online aspect because I'm like a people person. But with MonaLisa now, I'm going to be doing a lot of blogging. So I'll be writing about things that I feel like are important, raising awareness that way, some video blogs. It's going to grow. There's intention behind the site to be more than just a CBD company. We are, you know, healing facilitators, every one of us, you know, whether your demographic is for young children, because all mammalian life can take this. My 11-month-old puppy takes CBD every day because he's not neutered. It's just me and him. He's an alpha male. I need a little bit of help when it comes to balance.
Oh God. Oh
yeah,
my goodness.
like he's
I feel for you now. I have a
Thank
dog, so I know
you.
what it's like having a non-neutered dog. That's crazy.
And he's like, listen, he's beautiful, and he's never eaten a shoe in his life, and you know, like he's only ever attacked his own toys and tore them apart minutes after I bought them. Okay, I now know what it's like to feel like when your parents are like, you don't know the value of $1. Yeah, you spend $40 on your dog and watch him tear it apart in 4 minutes. Then you'll know the
Yeah.
value of $1. You know what I mean?
Oh,
But
yeah.
it helps in every aspect, and that's kind of like also with my grandfather, seeing the way the healthcare system took care of him, and being in the healthcare system myself my whole life, because having surgery, I had to go do checkups every year. And I recently just came into the understanding that I may or may not need to have, and I say may or may not, because in my mind, I don't think that I need to have surgery again, but from what the doctor is telling me, they would recommend it. So now I've got to go in and take care of my health through my own knowledge and ask for second opinions, because I have a completely different perspective on going to the doctors. Like, I don't want to get into it because that's not something I'm ready to tackle right now. But I like the holistic avenue. I like things that don't make me feel like not myself. You know, like I have a lot of friends who take antidepressants throughout my whole life, and you know, I've seen them not be who they want to be because they're muting parts of their emotional being, and it's not authentic anymore. Sometimes it's more authentic to be angry and volatile than it is to be numb and aloof, you know? So I'm grateful that I found something that allows me to carry my emotions in a way that I know how to use them in healthy ways, because I create every day, whether I'm a model taking photographs, or I'm painting, or I'm writing, or I'm out there talking to someone. Like, I'm using my emotions in a way that will help other people acknowledge their own emotion. And CBD is an emotional healer. It's an emotional, spiritual, physical healer. Like, I believe that if your body's in trouble, then your mind and your spirit are in trouble. And if your spirit's in trouble, your mind and your body are in trouble. And it's the Holy Trinity, you know? Like, there's always 3 things to think about. And with CBD, it just allows me to be more conscientious to myself. Like, the way you treat yourself is the way you're going to treat somebody else. So that's also another thing that helped me acknowledge all the hurt people in my life. I'm like, okay, well, they're treating me like this. I can only imagine what they're saying about themselves in their head, you know? So MonaLisa is here to create that platform, that safe platform for people to find alternatives to things they're dealing with, because it's literally multifaceted, multidimensional, and it's an isolated molecule. And it's not just now, like CBD or cannabidiol or hemp or that whole aspect of cannabinoid therapy has been around since the Chinese dynasty. You know, the Egyptians had the highest endocannabinoid counts once archaeologists went in and did like bone marrow dissection. Like they were smart. We're not the smartest we've ever been as humans. I know we have all these things, like Little Mermaid says, look at my stuff, isn't it neat? But we're not the most evolved mentally that we've ever been.
That's funny. Yeah, as a group on average. Yeah, it's interesting, right? The how we've changed over time based on different rules and stuff that have been in place. But it's cool how things always find its way back. It's almost like fashion, right? Like it always comes back around sooner or later.
Life is cyclical. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny, right? Like you sort of see it all, and it's just like you said, it's a play. And I'm glad that you're in something that has helped you, and you're promoting and raising awareness. I think that's the hardest thing, especially when the main plant has been illegal for a long time. there's a lot of awareness that needs to be done. And like same thing as we're doing here at the Grief Dream stuff, a lot of awareness. There's still a lot of people who get triggered by this stuff, or just, who hold it back, I guess the best way to put it, from the mainstream. And so at the end of the day, it's just like, you continue to raise awareness, continue to do your thing, and people will find you. As you said, like, people will find you if you're hurting. They'll come to you because you're a healer, but they'll also find your website and find other aspects of, like, to the plant stuff, if that's a calling for them as they move forward. So I'm just glad you're doing what you love. And that's the hardest thing in this life, is to find that, because with so many voices telling you what to do, that you should have kids by now, you should be dating, what are you doing with your life?
Hey, I'm 35, no kids, so you're only 26.
I have a daughter now. I really would like to give a portion of your life up, and like the way the world works, it'd be really hard to have a child out of wedlock. Like.
But you do your thing. You find your way, and you do your thing, and your way is going to be different what everyone else's way is. But that's why you're a rebel. It's really, you don't really have a blueprint, because you're so different from the norm. And that's great. That's cool. And I appreciate that part of you, because it makes life interesting to meet people like you. And you don't feel bored when you're talking to them at all either. It's just like, there's something that you offer that's different from other people. And then, good for you. And so we always like to ask for our podcast one last question. And that is, if you could have a dream tonight of your grandpa, what would that look like to you?
If I had a dream of him tonight, what would that look like?
Mm-hmm.
Like, he was a man, like, he was a hairstylist. That's how he met my grandmother. She was a model, and he modeled her hair, and they fell in love. And he also was a carpenter. He was a craftsman. So I already dream of him tonight. I would just want to see him doing what he loves. And that's, he was an artist, and it made me want to be an artist. So if I were to dream of him tonight, I'd want to see him on a roof, yelling and screaming his Italian gibberish and being his happy, joyful self. Because he was literally, his name was Natale. It's like Saint Nick, like he was Christmas. He was pure joy. So I just want to see him being happy and healthy.
And do you want to be a part of that dream, or do you just want to be like watching it from afar?
I wouldn't mind being a part of it. I wouldn't mind interacting with him again. Sorry, I get emotional. I don't think I've accepted that he's gone yet, because it's so hard to accept that someone you literally were raised by. Like, that's why I do feel like I should focus more on healing things with my parents, because like once they're gone, you can't talk. Not that you can't talk to them, because I think I've had more conversations with my grandfather than I had 2 years with him suffering from dementia. But it's just one of those things where you just want to know that they're okay, right? Like, people suffer so much, you just want to know that they're okay. And usually we're the ones that are still suffering once all that's said and done. Like, I lost my first grandfather when my mom was 13 years old. I wasn't even born yet. Yeah, I was probably floating around somewhere, but he died in a traumatic car accident. So my mother didn't grow up with a father, and I only grew up with one grandfather. So he was like he was the emperor in tarot, as you would call it. Like, I do tarot, I read cards. He was the emperor. He was the ruler. So it's just, I kind of feel responsible, like my dad. I'm an Aries. I have a lot of male energy in me, because I'm very passionate and forward, and I pursue my dreams, and that's usually a yang trait more than it is a yin trait. So I don't know. I just want, I don't mind. I'll be in it. I'll hang out with him. It'd be tough for me. I'm usually watching those things because I don't know how to handle it, but I hope he comes to visit me again soon, because I do want to dive deeper into that world. And it would, it's just hard. It's hard losing people, and grieving and moving on is more about resilience in the people that are still present and here, like I said, than it is about the people that have gone. So I don't know if that answers your question, because I just got really emotional. I'm like staring at his picture right now, to be honest. It's like he's everywhere.
It definitely shows you have a lot of love for him, and it's nice to hear that, and to hear that he was like a rock for the family in a way, to the emperor. But you have a lot of love for him too. So he did something special for you. Did he understand you more than other people in your family?
Oh wow, it's so weird that you're asking me this question. You know, like the last thing he ever said to me, because my grandfather ended up getting induced in a coma because the doctors didn't read his chart properly when he went in for a CAT scan because he was complaining about his head. So the same day he went to the hospital, not unconscious, he stayed there. It's like he went in. So the Sunday before that happened, he looked at me before he left and he literally said to me, Samantha, you okay? He was the only person who ever really allowed me to just be who I am. And he did. And that's why it was hard for me to go through the funeral with my family, because I was the black sheep for a long time. There was some family stuff that went on and I hadn't seen that side of the family for a minute because I wasn't invited, to be honest. I wasn't invited. And that's what I feel like triggered a lot of his emotional scarring in his wound in his brain, because he couldn't control his family and he couldn't control how people were acting, although he himself wished he could. So to not express that anger, you repress it. But when we repress anger like that, it comes out in other ways, right? So one of the first things he ever said to me when I found out he had dementia and some massive crazy stuff had happened, he said to me, you always thought it was your fault and it was never your fault. You've been an angel since you came to this earth. And I'll never forget that he said that to me. And I never told anybody really that, because that's a huge compliment, you know? And every time he would see me, the last 2 years, he just stopped in his tracks. He would always tell me that I'm beautiful. He would lecture me to make sure that I understood that, because that's something I myself struggled with growing up, I was bullied. I was emotionally and verbally abused. So you believe, when you're told things, you'll believe them. So for someone to tell me that I'm beautiful and not to hold it in a jealousy way, because it's hard, people envy beauty, but beauty is not what you look like, it's who you are. So if people think that I'm beautiful, it's because I act in loving and beautiful ways. And that's what I truly believe. It's not about my looks. I've got major scars on my stomach and my torso that make me look like I'm an alien. And that's something that I always felt I was different. You put a bunch of girls in a lineup, you cover our faces, we all have the same body type, but you know who I am because I'm scarred and you see my scars. And it looks like I have 3 belly buttons a little bit, right? I had surgery at 5 days old. The skin staples grew onto my muscle, So imagine growing 27 years in a body that your staples shut a little bit. There were parts of myself that were close to my own personal power and my solar plexus, because that's where the scars are, my solar plexus. And that's why I always felt like I was giving away my power. I had to learn how to stop that so that I can embody and appreciate who I am and not give it away to people, because it's not for them to have. You have your own power, and it's your choice whether or not you want to lighten up or darken down. I don't know how to put it, right? So yeah, I do believe that he was one of the very few people who understood me or understands me, because I don't feel like he's really gone.
Yeah, that's beautiful. How you put that. It's kind of like, sometimes I think parents, because they're protectors and they look at it as a child in a different way. They're responsible for a lot of how they grow up and stuff. I think sometimes that gets carried away and maybe they do too much that might be a little harmful. But grandparents, they don't have to do that as much, so I think they can appreciate a child for what it is, and they see it. Your grandfather obviously saw you from a different angle, saw you from a way that you wanted to be seen. You didn't want to, like you said, be kind of like you kind of traditionally were, however you were seen superficially. But he saw you as a light, right? He saw you as a bright light. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And he said that to you. A lot of people don't get that opportunity to get told that. And like you said, that's so special.
And that's why hasn't been the hardest. I know people that are taking it extremely hard, but I made sure that I was listening when I needed to listen, And that's an important part. If people are talking, are you listening? People could be telling you exactly what you need to hear, but your ears could be closed. So it's about awareness. It's where are you when you're present or not present?
And that's on you. That's good for you too, because you were able to accept that. You're able to internalize what he said to you. Because if you were just hung up on the past and what had been given to you as in terms of like, no, focus on this and this is more important, and you know, you're out of place or whatever it is, you're a black sheep, this and that, well, you wouldn't have had space to hear what your grandfather said.
Exactly. And I really encourage people to live their truth and to keep asking yourself those questions you need to ask. Like, I bumped into like a grade 12 portfolio I did for religion. It was called the CPT, but I think it was actually for philosophy class. And once I took philosophy in grade 12, everybody knew that it was game over for them. Like, it was game over. Like, I looked at everyone, I was like, you guys, yeah, like, I'm sorry.
Taking you out.
We're done here. And, you know, it's so funny because I read stuff I wrote in grade 10, and it was talked about how by 27, I wanted to be married, I wanted to be a teacher, I wanted to have a family. And then there's grade 12 where I never wanted to get married, and I don't know exactly who I am yet, and I love that I'm an artist. So, like, the transition from who I thought I was going to be to who I kind of knew I wanted to be to who I am now, it's been, like, I went to York University because my mom really wanted me to be a teacher, which is obviously where that energy comes from. You want to impress and you want to please your parents, you know? And so I went. I said, okay, fine, but if I'm going to York University, I'm going for English and philosophy. What am I going to go for? You know? I also went to a high school where I was specialized in visual arts. I was a visual artist. I didn't even think about going to OCAD. Like, that wasn't an option. You can't be an artist. What is artist? You know? When I started identifying as an artist, as a job title, everyone got scared because what does that mean? What does that mean? How are you going to make money? How are you going to survive? You know, and then I went to Ryerson after York because I did not like the environment at York. It was very morbid. That's when I found out I was manic depressive because I struggled with suicidal thoughts because nobody understood me. How am I going to be understood if I'm not being heard or I struggled. I struggled with every aspect of mental illness because I felt like I was alienated and a black sheep. And then I left there. I went to Ryerson and I did some humanity courses that were philosophy based because I just wanted to learn about people. And then when I decided or said, okay, Sam, you need to go to university, they said, or you need a degree, they say. So what are you going to do? Are you going to apply full time at Ryerson? Because I knew I wanted to be in the city. Or are you going to try to go to OCAD as a mature student? And I said, you know, well, what's the harm of trying to go to OCAD? You know, I had some mentors at the time that were like, well, what are you going to go to OCAD for? Even then, I applied for illustration because there's job based in illustration, you know, art. You can be hired by a company, you can work for magazines, but we both know me, I knew deep down, I just wanted to paint. And I wanted to paint like Jackson Pollock. I wanted to paint like Picasso. My Instagram name is Daughter of Picasso. Like, I didn't want to be put in a box. And then I went to OCAD. I got in. I accomplished it. I got into one of the most competitive programs in the country. And yet, I'm not even doing what I want. Still, I completed 2.5 years within 5 years, like at OCAD University. So it was just, I'm still learning, you know. And then I got involved with CBD and spirituality and all of those other aspects of what it really means to embody the title artist and who I am and who I was going to evolve into. And a lot of it came from having to remove the idea that I needed a degree right now at 27 years old to be considered smart, successful, and independent. Like, you don't need that. You do, and I want that. I love school. Like, if I could be in school for the rest of my life, learning, I will be. I hope that. But it's expensive also. We've created an economy we can't even live in. Well, how does it make sense? Thank God for TED Talks and Netflix and books, because that's how I learn. I'm a self-taught learner. Everything I can learn in school, I can also learn at home. You know, it's the value of your concentration and your determination to get it done. You know, if you need to be in a classroom setting, that's perfect. If you don't, that's perfect. Who's to tell you who's smarter or more qualified? You know? Yeah. So
there's, you know, and what I'm hearing, yeah, we sure could. What I'm hearing about this is there was a lot of resistance in your life, a lot of finding out what your true inner voice is, and you taking more stock into, as you went along, it seems like you're taking more stock into what your inner voice is and what your passions are, what you love to do, rather than taking stock into what you've been told and what, you know, kind of like societal kind of pressures and societal kind of casts that are put around you to kind of stick to a plan or whatever it is. Like, we all get those fears and those kind of, resistances that are all around us. But let me, give you some hope, is that you're 27. And if you're doing this now, that's an amazing thing. You're thinking about things, you're reevaluating your life, you're questioning stuff, and you're always pushing for more in terms of yourself and what you want out of your own life. And I think that's amazing. Like, there are people who are, 50, 60, 70, 80, on their deathbed right now, who wish they had done that more, wish that they had, had the courage to kind of face those challenges. Because, you could easily just not easily, but like, you could be like a different person and say, okay, well, this is what my life's going to be, and now I'm going to do this, and this is what I'm going to, whatever, and just live your life. But, you're always constantly pushing for the best in bringing out what can be the best and happiest in you and most loving. And that's the journey. And I think that you're doing an amazing job so far. Again, like, you're pretty young doing it. And look, we all have those things. I thought I'd get married and have a family at 24. I used to tell my mom that, but I had to roll with the punches, and things change, and we change as an individual. We change so much. It's incredible. People ask me, hey, what's your 5-year plan? And I hate that question, because I'm like, dude, I don't even know what the next year is going to be, let alone 5-year plan. But that's the beauty. That's the life I've created, and I love it.
Me too. I wouldn't have it any other way. I'm very grateful. I'm very blessed. Like, no matter how much material things I have, nothing equates to the way that you carry yourself or who you are as a person. And I hope people really, really believe that,
Yeah, and I think your grandfather, shows people what you should be for someone, is someone that's not judgmental, someone who allows you to have the space to just be. And, because there's not a lot of people who allow you to be and to appreciate you being. And he did. And I'm really happy you had that, because you're right. But there's so much resistance. You can get down on yourself. You can get down on the world. But he brought a lot of love and a lot of hope on what people could be, and you can inspire to be for other people as you move forward. So, hopefully, like, here and being on the podcast, you felt heard, and we gave you a glimpse of
best time.
Maybe what your grandfather gave you, but it's hard to compare to him. But at the end of the day, we just hope you had a good time here and just sharing. And I enjoyed the conversation a lot, and hearing about how you sort of morphed and what you continue to try to do to help others and to continue to grow inside.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I would love to come back on. Like, I obviously have so many things that I'd love to talk about. But no, I've been on a few radio shows, and I've done a few podcasts before. And every time I get on there, I leave feeling like I've done something that day that could help somebody. Like, if that's all I could do every day is help one person, one client, one patient at a time. You can't multitask so much. You have to remember to come back into our center and just remember why we're doing what we're doing, and then reevaluate and move on.
As I see it, you being you just is all you need to do. And then if people get helped or not, that's on them. And so, most people will. But at the end of the day, you being you is the most important thing, because that's the goal. The goal is to be authentic to yourself and to move forward in this crazy world with that. And, that's what Jesus said. We talked about, and a lot of other, famous people and inspiring people constantly do that. Steve Jobs did that, so over and over again, you see, like, it's being authentic is the way to go if it's coming from the right place of your heart. And that's what your goal is. So, I'm just happy you can, if anyone else sort of grows or whatever, it doesn't matter. You're good. You made it, you've made it, and you've done something, and it's going to continue to grow without your awareness. And that's the beauty of this life. We never know who we actually impact.
Yeah. If you love something, let it go and let them grow on their own. And that's the motto. Everyone wants to control the outcome of situations. You can't even control the outcome of your day. You can just control your reaction to things. And, I was reminded yesterday by my Reiki Master I was having a really rough day. I could not concentrate. And, I was talking about the new tenants and everything. She's like, just remember, just send the pink light. Just send the hearts. Like, visualize sending someone. If you're having an issue with someone, just look at them like they're covered in hearts, Thinking that. It helps. Cool. I'm telling you, it's freaking helps.
Is there like a Snapchat filter like that or something? It's like,
I think there's an Instagram one now. There's all these heart eyes. Yeah, you can find something on that.
Well, Samantha, this has been a great conversation. And I really believe I think it's soul work, what you're doing right now, right? You're doing that tough work. And I think that soul work is going to pay off. It's going to pay off when,
The time's ready.
yeah, you have a peace of mind and you have a understanding about yourself that's beyond what you were before. Where can people reach you and obviously get some? I actually ordered some CBD as we were talking, but
Really?
yeah, I did actually. I was so motivated by it, and I really like what you said about the product and how it's clean and where it's derived from, and yeah, it can have a lot of use in my life. But give out the website and where people can find it.
So MonaLisaHealing.com is our website. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook page at MonaLisa Healing as well. My personal page is Daughter of Picasso. And if you have any questions, you can always direct message me. My email is Samantha@MonaLisaHealing.com. And I'm always and willing and ready to answer any question you think that I may have the answer to. Doesn't matter what it's about. Could be about taking a bath, whatever it is, hit me up. It doesn't matter as long as it's not weird, because I won't answer.
Excellent. I like it. Samantha, you're a beautiful soul with just the ability to kind of question things, and you're a rebel just like me.
Love
So
it.
please check out our platform at griefdreams.ca for more information on the topic. We did add a donation button, and there are perks to those who donate. If you have Facebook, you can join the Grief Dreams group. You can share your dreams or hear more dreams of others. We are on Twitter and Instagram at Grief Dreams and at the Grief Dreams podcast. And as always, we like to end the podcast with love and gratitude from us to you.
I have questions. I have introduced myself. You have introduced yourself. This is a very good conversation.